Jacob served Laban. When Jacob left Beersheba and traveled toward Haran, at sunset, he came to a holy place and camped there. While sleeping, he saw a stairway reaching from earth to heaven, with angels going up and coming down on it, with the Lord standing beside him.
I am the Lord, the God of Abraham and Isaac. I will give to you and to your descendants this land on which you are lying. They will be as numerous as the specks of dust on the earth. They will extend their territory in all directions, and through you and your descendants, I will bless all the nations. I will be with you and protect you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done all that I have promised you.
The Lord is here. He is in this place, and I didn't know it. It must be the house of God, it must be the gate that opens into heaven.
The next morning Jacob took the stone that was under his head and set it up as a memorial. Then he poured olive oil on it and dedicated it to God. He named the place Bethel. Then Jacob made a vow to the Lord.
If you will be with me and protect me on the journey I am making and give me food and clothing, and if I return safely to my father's home, then you will be my God. This memorial stone which I have set up will be the place where you are worshipped, and I will give you a tenth of everything you give me.
Jacob continued his journey and went toward the land of the east. Suddenly he came upon a well out in the fields with 3 flocks of sheep lying around it.
Where are you from?
From Haran.
Do you know Laban, grandson of Nahor?
Yes, we do. Look, here comes his daughter Rachel with his flock.
Rachel arrived with the flock. When Jacob saw Rachel with his uncle Laban's flock, he went to the well, rolled the stone back, and watered the sheep.
I am your father's relative, the son of Rebekah.
She ran to tell her father. He brought Jacob into the house. When Jacob told Laban everything that had happened,
"Yes, indeed, you are my own flesh and blood. You shouldn't work for me for nothing just because you are my relative."
Laban had 2 daughters. The older one was named Leah, and the younger Rachel. Jacob was in love with Rachel, so he said,
I will work 7 years for you if you will let me marry Rachel.
I would rather give her to you than to anyone else.
Jacob worked 7 years so that he could marry Rachel. When the 7 years came, then Jacob said to Laban,
"The time is up, let me marry your daughter."
So Laban gave a wedding feast and invited everyone. But that night, instead of Rachel, he took Leah to Jacob. When Jacob discovered it was Leah, he went to Laban and said,
Why did you do this to me? I worked to marry Rachel.
I cannot give the younger daughter in marriage before the older. Wait until the week's marriage celebrations are over, and I will give you Rachel if you will work for me another 7 years.
Jacob agreed, and when the week of marriage celebrations was over, Laban gave him his daughter Rachel. Jacob loved her more than Leah. Then he worked for Laban for another 7 years. Leah had children, but Rachel was childless. Then God made it possible for her to have children. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son.
God has taken away my disgrace by giving me a son.
She named him Joseph. After the birth of Joseph, Jacob said to Laban,
Let me go, so that I can return home. Give me my wives and children that I have earned by working for you, and I will leave. You know how well I have served you.
I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages and I will pay.
You know how I have worked for you and how your flocks have prospered under my care. The little you had before I came has grown enormously, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I went. Now it is time for me to look out for my own interests. I don't want any wages. I will continue to take care of your flocks if you agree to this suggestion. Let me go through all your flocks today and take every black lamb and every spotted or speckled young goat. That is all the wages I want. In the future, you can easily find out if I have been honest. When you come to check up on my wages, if I have any goat that isn't speckled or spotted or any sheep that isn't black, you will know that it has been stolen."
Agreed. We will do as you suggest.
On the agreed day, Laban removed the male goats that had stripes or spots and all the females that were speckled and spotted or which had white on them. He also removed all the black sheep. He put his sons in charge of them, and then went away from Jacob with this flock as far as he could travel in 3 days. Jacob took care of the rest of Laban's flocks. The goats bred in front of the branches. They produced young that were streaked, speckled, and spotted. Jacob kept the sheep separate from the goats and made them face in the direction of the streaked and black animals of Laban's flock. In this way, he built up his own flock and kept it apart from Laban's. Jacob put the branches in front of the healthy animals at the drinking troughs, so that they would breed among the branches. But he did not put the branches in front of the weak animals. So, Laban had all the weak animals, and Jacob had all the healthy ones. In this way, Jacob became very wealthy. He had many flocks, slaves, camels, and donkeys. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying,
"Jacob has taken everything that belonged to our father."
He also saw that Laban was no longer as friendly as he had been earlier. Then the Lord said to him,
"Go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives. I will be with you."
So Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to meet him in the field where his flocks were.
"I have noticed that your father is not as friendly toward me as he used to be, but my father's God has been with me. You both know that I have worked for your father with all my strength. Yet he has cheated me and changed my wages many times. But God did not let him harm me." Whenever Laban said, "The speckled goats shall be your wages," all the flocks produced speckled young. When he said, "The striped goats shall be your wages," all the flocks produced striped young. God has taken flocks away from your father and given them to me. During the breeding season, I had a dream, and I saw that the male goats that were mating were striped, spotted, and speckled. The angel of God spoke to me in the dream and said,
"Jacob."
"Yes."
"Look," he continued, "all the male goats that are mating are striped, spotted, and speckled. I am making this happen because I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God who appeared to you at Bethel, where you dedicated a stone as a memorial by pouring olive oil on it, and where you made a vow to me. Now get ready and go back to the land where you were born."
There is nothing left for us to inherit from our father. He treats us like foreigners. He sold us, and now he has spent all the money he was paid for us. All this wealth that God has taken from our father belongs to us and to our children. Do whatever God has told you."
So, Jacob got ready to go back to his father's land Canaan. He put his children and his wives on the camels, and drove all his flocks ahead of him, with everything that he had gotten in Mesopotamia. Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and during his absence, Rachel stole the household gods that belonged to her father. Jacob deceived Laban by not letting him know that he was leaving. He took everything he owned and left in a hurry. He crossed the Euphrates River and started for the hill country of Gilead. 3 days later, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. He took his men with him and pursued Jacob for 7 days until he caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. In a dream that night, God came to Laban and said to him,
"Be careful not to threaten Jacob in any way."
Jacob had set up his camp on a mountain, and Laban set up his camp with his relatives in the hill country of Gilead.
Why did you deceive me and carry off my daughters like women captured in war? Why did you deceive me and slip away without telling me? If you had told me, I would have sent you on your way with rejoicing and singing to the music of tambourines and harps. You did not even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. That was a foolish thing to do. I have the power to do you harm, but last night the God of your father warned me not to threaten you in any way. I know that you left because you were so anxious to get back home, but why did you steal my household gods?
I was afraid, because I thought that you might take your daughters away from me. But if you find that anyone here has your gods, he will be put to death. Here, with our men as witnesses, look for anything that belongs to you and take what is yours.
Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen Laban's gods. Laban went and searched Jacob's tent, then he went into Leah's tent, and the tent of the 2 slave women, but he did not find his gods. Then he went into Rachel's tent. Rachel had taken the household gods and put them in a camel's saddlebag and was sitting on them. Laban searched through the whole tent but did not find them.
Do not be angry with me, sir, but I am not able to stand up in your presence. Laban searched but did not find his household gods.
Then Jacob lost his temper.
What crime have I committed? What law have I broken that gives you the right to hunt me down? Now that you have searched through all my belongings, what household article have you found that belongs to you? Put it out here where your men and mine can see it, and let them decide which one of us is right.
I have been with you now for 20 years. Your sheep and your goats have not failed to reproduce, and I have not eaten any rams from your flocks. Whenever a sheep was killed by wild animals, I always bore the loss myself. I didn't take it to you to show that it was not my fault. You demanded that I make good anything that was stolen during the day or during the night. Many times I suffered from the heat during the day and from the cold at night. I was not able to sleep. It was like that for the whole 20 years I was with you. For 14 years I worked to win your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks. And even then you changed my wages so many times. If the God of my fathers, the God of Abraham and Isaac, had not been with me, you would have already sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my trouble and the work I have done, and last night he gave his judgment.
These young women are my daughters, their children belong to me, and these flocks are mine. In fact, everything you see here belongs to me. But since I can do nothing to keep my daughters and their children, I am ready to make an agreement with you. Let us make a pile of stones to remind us of our agreement.
So Jacob got a stone and set it up as a memorial. He told his men to gather some rocks and pile them up. Then they ate a meal beside the pile of rocks. Laban named it Jegar-sahadutha, while Jacob named it Gilead.
This pile of rocks will be a reminder for both of us.
That is why that place was named Gilead.
May the Lord keep an eye on us while we are separated from each other. If you mistreat my daughters or if you marry other women, even though I don't know about it, remember that God is watching us. Here are the rocks that I have piled up between us, and here is the memorial stone. Both this pile and this memorial stone are reminders. I will never go beyond this pile to attack you, and you must never go beyond it or beyond this memorial stone to attack me. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor will judge between us.
Then, in the name of the God whom his father Isaac worshipped, Jacob solemnly vowed to keep this promise. He killed an animal, which he offered as a sacrifice on the mountain, and he invited his men to the meal. After they had eaten, they spent the night on the mountain. Early the next morning Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters goodbye and left to go back home. Lesson learned from story. God graciously uses situation, consequences, and difficult people, over time, to shape his people.
God uses situations to shape his people. God promised Jacob that he would protect him wherever he went and would not leave him. God was with Jacob and led him to the very spot he needed to be, and him was overwatching, arranging the circumstances to shape Jacob into the man he wanted him to be.
God uses consequences to shape his people. God never lets us sin and walk away without consequences. He forgives the eternal penalty of our sin when we trust Christ, but He doesn't remove all the temporal consequences. If He did, we'd take sin lightly and not deal with its roots in our lives. It may take a while for the seeds we've sown to sprout, but they will come up. Jacob had sown deception, he reaped deception. God uses the consequences of sin to shape him.
God uses difficult people to shape His people. God doesn't just use circumstances, He uses people like Laban to be His drill sergeants. That doesn't excuse Laban's sin, but it's that kind of person that God often uses in the lives of His people to sandpaper off their rough edges. It may be an employer or fellow employee, a family member, or a neighbor. He or she may or may not claim to be a believer. Laban had some knowledge of the Lord, but he also had his idols, but God will use him to drive Jacob to depend on Him.
God takes time to shape His people. When Jacob's mother sent him away, she told him that he would be in Haran for a few days. Jacob wasn't expecting a 20-year boot camp, but that's how it turned out. For 14 of those years he didn't earn anything except a room and 2 wives, one of whom he didn't even want. Yet God didn't seem to be in any hurry to push Jacob ahead into His program to bless all nations through Abraham's descendants. God always takes whatever time He deems necessary to train His servants. God has an eternal perspective.
God weaves grace into the process of shaping His people. God's guidance on that most important decision. Yet in spite of Jacob's spiritual immaturity and self-directed life, God graciously gave him the woman he loved, blessed him with 12 sons and some daughters, blessed him financially in spite of Laban's tricks, and returned him safely to the land of Canaan, where his brother received him without a trace of revenge. That's God's grace. Thanks for watching this video and watch our other Bible stories. Like and subscribe to our channel for other Bible learning stories and video updates.